Hello, and thank you for joining the Organic Educational Conference as part of the 2021 Virtual Southeast Regional Fruit and Vegetable Conference. I am Juan Carlos Diaz-Perez in substitution of Tim Coulon from the Department of Horticulture, who will be the moderator for this presentation. Pesticide CEU and CCA credits are available for most presentations offered during the LIV SE Regional Conference. Check the Pesticide CEU guide for a list of approved presentations and participating states. The Pesticide CEU guide is located in the Event Resources tab under the Media player. The guide is also available at the Resources Center located on the main menu of the conference platform. Please note, pesticide credits will only be available for registered attendees and only for the LIV conference. Credits will not be available for on-demand viewing. There is a simple three-step process to receive pesticide CEU and CCA credits. First, go to the audience chat box located on the left side of your screen and type your first name, last name, and states for which you are requesting credits. Again, go to the audience chat box located on the left side of your screen and type your first name, last name, and states for which you are requesting credits. You will not do this for every presentation to request credits. The second step is to sign out at the end of every presentation. To sign out, go to the audience chat box and type your first name, last name, and states for which you are requesting credits. You will be reminded to sign out at the end of the presentation. The third step is to complete the pesticide CEU registration. You only have to complete this registration one time during the conference. This is not required with every presentation. To access the pesticide CEU registration web link, open the pesticide CEU guide on the Event Resources tab located under the Media player. The pesticide CEU registration web link is located on the front cover of the guide. This presentation is pre-recorded to reduce technical difficulties. We will be answering your questions live at the end of this presentation. You can submit a question at any point during this presentation by typing your question in the questions box and pressing send. Don't forget to thank our 2021 conference sponsors and exhibitors by visiting the virtual trade show and featured products pavilion. Lastly, do not forget to join us each morning for coffee chats and each evening for networking. Check the conference agenda for details. Now, I would like to introduce myself. I am replacing the moderator. I am Juan Carlos Diaz-Perez. I work at the Department of Horticulture, University of Georgia, and will be presenting shading treatments on organic high tunnel production in South Georgia. Some of my background includes a bachelor's degree from the University of Guadalajara, a master's and a PhD on plant physiology from the University of California at Davis. I have been working over 20 years at UGA conducting research on organic and sustainable vegetable production. The presentation I will be talking about is going to be related to some of plasticulture organic research intended to reduce heat stress on crops. Georgia is an important vegetable producing state, among the top 5 in the country, with a production of over $1 million per year in a large acreage of about 170,000. Interestingly, only 1 out of 500 acres is produced organically. Temperature is one of the challenges in vegetable production, and that includes organic production. We can see that temperature over the world has been increasing over the last 120 years, and that has been in part due to the heavy utilization of fossil fuels. Since looking for ways to deal with these challenging environmental conditions, horticulturists have utilized different technologies to try to modify the environment where they grow the crops. Some of these technologies include the use of the plastics in ways such as the utilization of mulches, microtunnels, floating covers, windbreaks, high tunnels, greenhouses, and shade houses. All these technologies basically in different levels modify the crop microenvironment. One of the more and more commonly used technologies for growing vegetables in the United States and in Georgia also is the use of shade houses. Shade houses have a lot of potential because they increase fruit quality, they allow for season extension, they also allow for having a high efficiency in the use of water and nutrients, and may reduce the use of pesticides because they oftentimes are associated with reductions of the incidences of pests and diseases. However, the use of shading nets or shading as a technique is not new. We have evidences of the use of shading to grow tobacco in Georgia and Florida for about 100 years. So in reality, we are revisiting the utilization of this technology, in this case for growing vegetables. But despite that we have been using shading for over 100 years, we still have a lot of questions. We are not in complete understanding of how shading affects the plants, which are the optimal levels for each of the different species. Those are important questions if we want to get full advantage of the technology. In order to answer some of those questions and in order to find ways to deal with methods to reduce the heat stress of different vegetables, we started a project on bell pepper about 10 years ago, in which we tried to answer the question of what was the best optimal level for bell pepper. So we grow the peppers at different levels of shading from 0% to 80% using a black net. What we found is that plants, in this case, the plant yield showed a strong response to shade level. As you can see in the slide, for bell peppers, the optimal production for bell peppers was at about 34% shading. And it's also interesting to see that the yield of the plants at 34% was about the double compared to plants under unshaded conditions. So the level of shading was showing a very important impact on fruit yield. We can also see from this slide that, which is the line in the bottom, the purple one, the yield of the cold fruit, the unmarketable fruit, declines as we increase the level of shading. This is important because what we found is that the percentage of fruit with physiological disorders such as sand skull was reduced very significantly, as shown in this slide. We can see how the marketable fruit was a little bit less than 60% with no shading, and it increased to about 90% the marketable percentage with the use of shading. And all that was attributed to the reduction in the percentage of fruit with physiological disorders. Based on that information, we decided to conduct a study on another crop. In this case, we chose jalapeno pepper, which is a crop of growing importance. And we evaluated this pepper under organic conditions, utilizing different levels of different colors of shade net. We evaluated black, red, silver, white, and had an unshaded treatment as a control. The study was conducted at the University of Georgia Tifton campus in organic certified land. We grew jalapeno variety compadre, which is not certified for organic production, but we use untreated seed. Data show that the plant height responded strongly to the use of shade nets. As you can see from this slide, the plants on black net were the tallest, and the plants with no shading were the shortest. And there was variability in the plant height among the different shade nets. With respect to yield, yield was the highest on black net and among the lowest on unshaded conditions, although plants on red and the red net also showed reduced fruit yields. We think that this reduction in yield in the unshaded was caused by the intense light and high temperatures because of the summer conditions when the crop was grown. As you can see with the black net, there was some amelioration of light and presumably also temperature that may explain these increased yields. We were interested in looking at the fruit quality, and we looked at the color of the fruit. Color of the jalapeno pepper, although jalapeno is usually green, when you have a fruit that is green, in reality, underneath the green color, there are other pigments, and one important group of pigments are the carotenoids. We can see that there was a difference in the color value A particularly. You can see that in the unshaded conditions, it was the lowest, which is the more negative, and it was the highest, the least negative, under black. So these differences in A value, B value, and L value indicate possible differences in fruit composition as affected by the shade net treatments. So in summary for jalapeno, we can say that all colored shade nets were in general beneficial to the jalapeno pepper plant, but that the plant height was the highest in the under black net, and the shortest plants were with no shading. But also black shade nets produce the highest fruit yield. So that is showing us some potential benefits of using black shade net for jalapeno pepper production. The other technology we're showing today is the use of high tunnels. High tunnels are increasingly important for vegetable production, particularly for small growers and organic growers in the state, and I can say all over the country. High tunnels are basically what we know as hook houses. They are low-cost structures, plastic covered. One characteristic they have is that we use a passive use of the solar energy. They are not heated artificially. They protect the plants from adverse conditions, not only for temperature, but they also protect the plants from rains and winds, which allows us to have a nice, high-quality produce. Consequently, also, because of the effect on the environment, they allow the growers to grow crops in cooler periods of the year, as well as to have some extension of the season, which can have important marketing opportunities. One problem with high tunnels in many areas of the country, including Georgia, is the overheating during the summer. This overheating during the summer prevents the use of the tunnels during that time of the year. And that is one of the main reasons why we're conducting this study. We have done some evaluations of the changes in the temperature, and this is also will be documented in a later report on this study of how the shade nets on top of the tunnel affect the temperature inside the tunnel. You can see in this picture, the picture on the right, which has no shade net, and the picture on the left with shade net, you can see that the intensity of the illumination, which is basically the light as far red, causing heating on the greenhouse. So it's evident that having some shade on top of the greenhouse is preventing some infrared light reaching the interior of the greenhouse. And that explains why there is less overheating or less heating of the high tunnels with the shade net. How the use of this shade net affects the crops we grow if we want to grow them in the summer, well, that's one of the main reasons why we're conducting the study. In this study, we're comparing 3 tunnels with no shading, with a shade net that is black and a shade net that is silver. The study will be conducted or was conducted in Tifton, Georgia. We use the variety Red Snapper. And since it's organic, we also use an organic fertilizer, a 543 Symphony fertilizer, and we planted in the middle of August. The treatments were 2. We evaluated 2 plastic mulches, black and white, to see the effect of the mulch on soil temperature and in turn how it affects plant growth and yield. And the 3 types of nets that we mentioned before, the black, silver, and no shade net conditions. Four weeks after transplanting, there were some evidences of more plant development on white mulch versus black mulch. Temperatures, as you would expect, under black mulch were higher in the soil than under white mulch, and that explains part of the differences. And these differences in growth were observed not only in high channel with black net. We saw a similar response in the tunnels with silver net and with no net. If you pay attention, plants with no net have the most reduced plant growth compared to the plants grown in high channels with shade nets. When we measured plant growth late in the fall, the differences in plant growth between the two mulch treatments were not so evident. But we could see also that the plants were similar in the three different types of shade nets. And overall, again, plant growth was the most reduced with plants on the black net, on black mulch, but also when these plants were grown with no shade net in the high channel, they also had a reduced plant height. It was also very interesting that we used a variety called red snapper. This red snapper tomato is advertised as being resistant to tomato yellow leaf curl. Well, there was no tomato in the experiment which was free of the disease. All tomatoes had symptoms of tomato yellow leaf curl, regardless of the mulch treatment, regardless of the shade net treatment. In a study we're conducting right now, I am just showing you some preliminary pictures of how the plants looked 1 month after transplanting, and you can see some effect again of plants on white mulch being higher than plants on black mulch. And these are plants without shade net, plants on silver net, and plants under black net. So we can see that, again, there is an effect of the different type of shade net, and also there is an effect of plastic mulch. But how does that difference in plant growth affect the yield? Well, if you look at the yields, it was very interesting to see that unshaded plants, that means the high channel with no shade net, had the highest yields compared to silver net and black net. And you might wonder, how come, since plants were shortest under shading net, were the highest, they were tallest under shading net, had reduced yield compared to plants that were unshaded? The explanation we can have is that the shade net was necessary only during the periods of high temperatures, which is summer and early fall. In late fall and the winter, and these plants produce fruit during the winter, the presence of the shade net not only was unnecessary, but was detrimental, because plants had access to reduced light levels. And as you know, light is necessary for photosynthesis. So the reduced light during the winter explains why plants under black net and under silver net had reduced yields compared to plants unshaded. With respect to the effect of mulch, we can see that overall in the three net treatments, plants with plants on white mulch had the highest yields. So the conclusion for the tomato study: white mulch produced faster plant establishment and greater plant growth compared to mulch. Also, white mulch resulted in higher marketable yield compared to black mulch. Shade nets allowed for a faster plant establishment during the summer compared to unshaded conditions. Use of shade nets in the winter reduce fruit yields. Shade nets consequently are not necessary as temperatures decrease during the fall and winter. White mulch then is suggested for plantings in early fall and during the summer. The silver shade net is recommended for the summer and early fall because they allow the greatest plant growth. But this shade net should be removed as the temperatures are not causing any plant stress. No organic tomato cultivar we have been able to find so far with resistance to tomato yellow leaf curl. So that's another area that we need to work on, and we are working presently. So in conclusions, climate change conditions such as increased temperatures may negatively impact yield and quality of crops. Environmental manipulations such as the use of high tunnels and shading nets may allow to maintain or increase fruit yield and quality. It also may optimize the use of resources such as water and fertilizers. These technologies also allows us to produce out of season and to extend the season. I want to thank Gunawan, our technician, and the OREI grant awarded to our program. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation.